confirm, Chair, that we are now live.
Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Management Board. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and also making a recording. The recording will be available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting is concluded. There's no other attendees. To ensure recording quality is maintained, could members speak as clearly as possible, keep background noise to a minimum, and ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent? You may have noticed, deliberately, I had left my laptop not on silent, and I have now turned it to silent, as I invite everybody else to do. We have no members of the board joining us remotely. I will... sorry. Councillor Barry Durkin has joined us remotely. Can I just ask that you can hear and see us and check that we can hear and see you?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can see and hear you very well.
We obviously have members of the committee and other attendees present, and some more attendees will come into the meeting later. I will ask people to introduce themselves the first time they speak, and we'll try and remember to encourage people to do that. Have we received apologies for absence?
We received apologies for absence from Councillor David Davis.
Have we received any named substitutes?
No, no name substitutes.
Do any members have any declarations of interest in respect to items on the agenda? I'm going to, it's not really a declaration of interest, it's just something I think members should be aware of. When we get to talking about the capital programme, some capital projects relate to the Stronger Towns programme. I sit on the Stronger Towns board representing the City Council, so I don't think that's a declarable interest, because but it's something I think you should be aware of. Are there any proposed corrections for accuracy from the minutes? Can members of the board who were present at the meeting on the 14th of January 2025 please vote to approve the minutes be agreed as a correct record? All those in favour? That seems to be carried. I understand we do not have any questions from members of the public or members of the council.
No, no questions received.
Then we should be able to turn straight to our first item, which is on digital data and technology, which is to provide an overview of the work packages delivered since the implementation of the digital data and technology strategy in March 2024, consider the impact it's made on organisational performance and intelligence, and its strategic contributions and future deliverables. Would Councillor Stoddart or Rosie want to say a few words just to set the scene?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the Council's DDAT strategy, digital data and technology strategy, we approved last year, and what we're now doing is, in fact, I seem to remember, Chair, we spoke and, sorry, not yourself, it was Councillor Wardle. He was very keen to ensure that we included AI in there. Again, AI has grown exponentially in the last 18 months, but we put AI in there to address that in there as an area, so we know we've got it as a placeholder and it will improve as we go forward. Obviously, that was now 18 months ago, and what Simon has now put together is a quick update where we are. As we go through, you can see the importance of it. And of course, this is just one of the streams that will support the transformation strategy. Technology is one of them. There are another four. And of course, that's how we go through. So as we go through, Rosie, anything you'd like to say on that?
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Stoddart makes a good point in relation to the enabling nature of the strategy that we've got in front of us today, and that we are just stepping into the review stages of. So we've completed the first year of delivery. We've learned a lot. We've experimented a lot in relation to applications of technology such as AI within our customer service model to see how and whether that enables people to better interact with the council. There are more opportunities now available to us in relation to the types of technologies that we can integrate into our ways of working as a council. We're undergoing a number of technological transformational projects at the moment to enable better ways of working and collaboration across council colleagues to further support us in relation to that one council way of working which is set out within the strategy itself. But as with technology, it moves quickly, it moves rapidly, there's changes in relation to what's available to us all the time. There are other councils across the length and breadth of the UK who are further ahead, who are further behind than us in relation to the integration of technologies into council ways of working. So in terms of what we've done over the course of the past couple of years is build relationships with those councils, learn from them and support us to shape our strategy moving forwards. It's the right time to review the strategy now. Our transformation strategy is being published at the end of this month, and there will be, as a result of the implementation of that strategy, new ways of working that we'd like to implement through technology as well to support us to get there. So very happy to take any questions in relation to the report.
Sorry, if I can as well just to pick up on what Rosie was saying there. So we've done quite a bit of work with other councils. We're trying to learn from them. For example, Derby City Council are very, very early adopters of generative AI into and embedding it in their workflows. What we want to be is not an early adapter, but we want to be coming through on the second wave, learning all the lessons that the early adopters have done so that we can use AI and other technologies, but from an experience, from the viewpoint of looking at what has gone before us so we don't make the same mistakes. Thank you.
I can see members have a question, but I'm going to use my prerogative to ask the first question. So, there seem to have been a set of probably quite rational sort of things to do with IT. What I don't get from the paper or from the strategy is what is the administration's vision of what the council could be like with the effective deployment of digital data and technology.
So the DDAT strategy, as I say, was written 18 months, maybe 20 months ago. What that is, it's one of the sub-elements and supporting strategies of the transformation strategy. That's the overlying arching piece. And in there, if you look at I think it's on about page 3, you've got the radial diagram that shows the 5 areas. And I'll just see if I can remember what they are. There's 5 of them. Communities, customer services, digital, commissioning and organisation. So those 5 areas are there. That's our future target operating model. That's where we want to be in the future. And then as we go through, Rosie's strategy then refers to how we're going to get there. And then, of course, the key bit then is at the back end where we have, it looks very much like 5 or 6 elements where we talk about how we're going to deliver them. They almost look a bit like delivery plan actions. And what I'll be doing is, we'll cover on later, but we'll add those items to the performance reports as going into the next financial year, where we'll include them as an addendum because we haven't been able to get them into the delivery plan in time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crockett, I have first.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Rosie and Councillor Stoddart. I'm just looking at the item 3 on the paper, strategic aims of the DDAT. The first line, it says, digital for all benefits everyone, including residents. Sorry, something's just popped up in front of my notes. Whilst I accept that we have to move on in this digital world, we must look at where we are coming from. What about those who aren't digital? And I'm sure we have a number of those still in the county. Could you expand on how we're supporting them? You know, we all acknowledge that we have a county that has the higher than national average person over 65, 75 and 85. So how are we reaching out to them so that they're not lost in our system? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Crockett. Very, very valid point. I would start by saying that actually some of the most astute users of IT that I've come across are actually some of the older members of the public. So I try not to categorise them all on that. And in fact, I've seen some silver servers that actually I can learn some good techniques from. But you're very right. Not everyone wishes to have digital thrust upon them, and we have put in through the transformation. There is an option to opt out. So, for example, as we're looking at, and Rosie will talk a bit more on it, on the new telephone system, you can go through the AI bits. But if you wish to speak to an individual, you will eventually speak to an individual. So that we retain that ability.
Yeah, it's that you will eventually reach an individual or a person that's a bit concerning. And I completely understand that a lot more over 65s, etc., are more digitally literate, shall I say, but we still have quite a few that aren't. I was in a pharmacy the other day, and a lady who was older than me, so yes, we're over 65 plus, and she was told to apply online for her prescription. Yes, she said, I can do that. And they said, oh, which pharmacy are you at? And she said, oh, my OMG. And I thought that was really quite funny, actually, because she was HMG, but, you know, she was trying to make light of, you know, what's happening in the real world. So, yeah, interesting to hear how people deal with the complexities of digital life.
Just before I go, so just for reference, I have Councillor O'Driscoll, Councillor Stark, Councillor Bartlett and Councillor Fagan. Just before that, just want to pursue this a little bit. So an Understanding Herefordshire report I happened to read yesterday said we have about 17,000 people who don't have regular access to the internet. Should we be doing more, not just to make sure that they don't have to use the internet, but actually to support people into digital inclusion? And is that something that should be in the DDAT strategy, or is it somewhere else?
Very happy to take that, Chair, and both really good questions. And just to build on what Councillor Stoddart was saying in relation to the approach to digital by default, I think that's something that is the term of the century in relation to technology, but actually our nuance as Herefordshire is very different. So our approach in relation to integrating technologies into our customer service model is digital by design, and very much working with our communities to support us to shape that. We are at the start of that. We've done some work in relation to testing and reshaping our customer service pathways, where we know them to be clunky and inefficient and where we're getting the most contact from our customers. However, we are developing as part of our overall transformation strategy a much more strategic approach to that will have residents actively co-producing our approach to digital by design alongside us, so we can be sure that we get it right. And really interestingly, in relation to the data, we've got a significant proportion of adults in Herefordshire in my age bracket who choose not to use the internet. It's not that they can't, and it's not that they don't have access, it's because they choose not to. So unpicking some of that with our working age adults as well is going to be fascinating, and will support us to then further develop our customer service model in a way that really works for Herefordshire. An additional complexity to that is, of course, our infrastructure, and you reference it there, Chair, and Councillor Stoddart and I talk about this frequently in relation to the what more can we do and should we do in relation to supporting the development of our infrastructure. That is hot on my agenda in terms of my areas of focus now. Transformation strategy is live. We've delivered the Fastershire project. That has taken us so far. However, there are still black spots effectively across the county that people are struggling with in relation to their IT facilities, but also their mobile connectivity. So if we were to switch all of our customer service channels to IT, to mobile, we would inadvertently limit such a significant proportion of our residents from engaging with us in the ways that's important to them. So yes, in response to your question, Chair, we can be doing more, we should be doing more, we will be doing more. Forms part of the transformation strategy. It's difficult because we're a council and we're reliant on our ability to leverage our influence of private providers. But there are councils in neighbouring areas that we can work with to strengthen our voice in relation to how we lobby those organisations to support us. And that will form part of the refresh strategy that is published towards the end of the month.
Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on your comment of 17,000, it's not a figure I recognise. As Rosie said, Fastershire finished last March. Fastershire delivered 98.5% of the county with access to internet, at least 30 megabits. That to me is about 2,700. So I'm not sure where the 17,000 figure comes from.
I don't want to hog time from other members here, but so that 17,000 was people who don't have regular access to the internet. It doesn't mean that they don't have the connection. It just means that for whatever reason they are not regular internet users. We'll see what the committee thinks, but I feel like there should be a recommendation on an action plan that really sort of looks at this issue of digital exclusion, which Rosie has sort of highlighted as multifactorial. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think you were more picking up on digital literacy rather than necessarily infrastructure across the county. And that's something that's been highlighted this week, particularly in Ross, with the closure of yet another bank, with banks pushing more and more people. And I think it is a major issue. I think we do need to concentrate on digital literacy because that affects our services. And the more we can do to help people access online services, the better. The report talks about improved organisational performance through digital transformation, but it's not clear to me what that looks like in measurable terms. Could you clarify what success actually means? Are we tracking staff productivity, service efficiency, or resident satisfaction? And how will these improvements be monitored over time? And I'd also like to understand how the impact of the AI tools like Copilot and Magic Notes are going to be assessed. Maybe, for instance, what measures are in place to make sure that we're respecting user privacy, particularly in sensitive areas like social care? Are we going to see clear KPIs or performance baselines to compare before and after implementation, please?
Thank you, Councillor. In relation to, I'll pick up AI and Copilot first in relation to how it is we're going to measure the successes of those AI pilots. Each of those pilot programmes has a set of key performance indicators allocated to it, which have been co-produced with members of staff that are going to start trialling them within the organisation. We are now just at the stage of running a first feedback session in relation to the use of Copilot across the organisation to understand how the test cases have been used, where they haven't been used, where people have been brave and tried new things, and then how that has supported us in relation to efficiency, productivity and collaboration. In relation to Magic Notes, the pilot will be evaluated at the end because that is to do with case working for social workers, so we're really keen to run it through to its course. But obviously we've got our working groups that we have people come to us, support us to enhance the productivity of the resource as we work through, as people test it and understand what works and what doesn't. So we've got an ongoing feedback loop in relation to that particular pilot, as we do with Copilot as well, and the evaluations will be run and shared at the end of each of those programmes. In relation to the tracking of success and what we expect to see through the implementation of technologies across the organisation, I think it's fair for us to say that we would be wanting to see measurable improvements in relation to all of what you've raised. So staff productivity, ease of access for residents, resident satisfaction, etc. However, we are at the start of that, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of the work that we've done in relation to digital and technology so far, as you'll see in the report, has been largely foundational. We've had to get our systems and processes as sturdy and solid as we can in relation to enable us to integrate more technologies that can help us to see distance travelled in relation to improvements. So when we now start to work through our transformational programme in relation to digital and IT, each of those projects that we run will have the KPIs associated with them. And as Councillor Stoddart mentioned earlier, we'll be reporting against those programmes through our regular quarterly reports.
Sure, I appreciate it's foundational, but we can still have smart targets so that, you know, as councillors we can and the cabinet as well can cast an eye over what's being achieved. There's a lot of money being spent on this. Have we got your assurance that those smart targets are in place and they will be shared?
Councillor, yes. So in terms of the IT activity that's been taking place so far, that is already reported through our quarterly performance report. So there are significant numbers of IT programmes that are already sitting within the performance management framework. But moving forward and with the work that we're doing in relation to building our performance management framework, we've got aspirations in relation to the KPIs and the outcomes and how we want to capture and measure those from a number of perspectives. And that approach will develop over the course of the implementation of the new system. So we have got a yes for now in terms of what we're delivering, what we're measuring and how we're reporting, but we want to improve what we do because we feel that there is more that we can report against in terms of outcomes.
Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Councillor. It's you make a very valid point about how we're measuring them. As I say, some of them may not be in. We may not have everything in the actual delivery plan, as I say, because that went to public. That was published earlier this month. Our transformation strategy, which comes to cabinet at the end of the month, what that will then be looking at, as I say, that has very specific KPIs towards the end, and they will be included in the performance report as an addendum.
Great. I mean, thank you for that. It was really comprehensive. I'm still not entirely sure what you meant, but I just want to know if we're saving money, if residents are happier, or we're doing the job better, and that's it really.
Thank you, Councillor. There is detail in report in relation to what we've implemented so far and how that's benefited in terms of the finances for the organisation. As we say, we do definitely have the reporting against the outcomes of the work that we're doing in the current performance reports, and that will change and enhance as we step through the wider transformation strategy. So yes, it is all there and publicly available. And
just Councillor, if you look at section 4 on, I think it's page 2 of the report, it shows you the cost savings per annum and then the one-off savings as we migrate to the cloud and use MS365. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Stark next, then Councillor Bartlett, then Councillor Fagan, then Councillor Cornthwaite.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that presentation. My concern is more the interaction with the customer services strategy. You have the strategic aims of the DDAT, which is a 4-year strategy. And I think you've partly answered my question about how you split the elements over the 4 years in terms of how you're moving forward, Rosie. You say you have to build a foundation first before you can do some of the other things. But we've got this 2024 customer service strategy that I think is going to be refreshed. And what concerns me is I'm finding it difficult when we look at the all benefits aim here for residents as well as obviously for internal to the organisation, how this strategy is going to deliver those benefits eventually for our residents, which is crucial, of course, if we haven't refreshed our customer service strategy yet. And if we do refresh that, does that mean reviewing this and looking again at the timing of some of these elements so we can bring forward perhaps those enhancements that will benefit our residents most?
Yeah, so Councillor, very valid point. It's the alignment of all these strategies. It's challenging as we write one, so that then forces us to then do the next one. But I can assure you that the customer strategy is actually in draft and we're working on it at the minute. And that's where, to allude to the previous point about leaving behind those who don't wish to be digital, that will be included in there. So there will be, I mentioned that it will be eventually get to a person. One of the options may be, do you wish to speak to a person? And you go straight to a person. And that's the sort of things we're looking at.
Just before you come in, Rosie, Councillor Stoddart, I did ask a question, would a refreshed customer services strategy maybe lead to a new look at the DDAT strategy?
Well, I think a lot of these, it's like a circle. It's, yeah, as you produce and mature one, then you actually then relook at something. It's constantly, and as Rosie alluded to, technology is leaping its head. It's such a case. What we need to do is, we're sometimes getting, I wouldn't say we're getting left behind, but we can only prioritise certain things, and we will have work to look at them. Certainly, I'm sure Rosie will talk in a minute about the customer strategy. That is one of the pieces of work that she's looking at the minute.
Thank you, Councillor Stark. Really good question. And we're actually in quite a fortunate position as a council, because it doesn't happen very often that key strategies, key enabling strategies for future transformation of the council require refresh at the same time. So it's very fortunate that we are able as a Directorate for Strategy and Transformation to bring these key pieces together so that they do start to align better and one enables the other. We are in that process of review, as I say, and it is challenging to, I'd like to bring that to you today so you can have a look and see and unpick how that looks, but you're absolutely right. The target operating model around our customer service approach needs to align with our DDAT strategy, and our DDAT strategy needs to enable us to do what it is customers say matter to them in relation to how they interact with us as residents. So the opportunity that we have at the moment is significant to be able to align all of these key pieces of policy and strategy together so that we as a council can work through one aligned vision to deliver the best for our residents.
And so the next 3 years of the DDAT could change, couldn't it, Rosie?
Well, it could change, but the review, as we say, of those two policies and strategies together will support us to bring the change together. But ultimately, in relation to digital technology and in relation to our customer service strategy, if we are truly a listening and learning organisation and delivering transformation as we'd like to see that delivered, we should expect to see changes, developments to our strategies as we go, because we'll be listening to our residents, we'll be learning, we'll be responding, we'll be integrating new technologies as they become available to us and as we learn more. So even if we have a 4-year strategy, and even if they are the most beautifully aligned strategies in the world, from a customer and digital perspective, because we're listening, learning and growing, we would always want to see developments within that and changes within that in line with the needs of our residents as we move forward.
Okay, Councillor Bartlett, thank you for bearing with us.
Thank you, and thank you to Councillor Driscoll for following up on organisational performance. One of the things that I was thinking about, came across it right at the beginning of the report, is about improving customer and staff experiences. Now, we're talking about the systems themselves here. So obviously, if I was a customer and I wanted to report a pothole, that would quite easily fit into this discussion. But as a customer, my customer experience would probably include having my pothole fixed. And so I wonder where we are. It feels to me there's a kind of a gap in this conversation for me about the systems and the overall effect and this revised DD strategy is going to have. So when we talk about getting better, are we talking about getting better at reporting things and quicker at being able to report things? Or are we also talking about being better at being able to resolve things? And then with our strategy and our ability to work with our partners, are our systems then going to align seamlessly with, say, whoever the new BBLP is going to be, or the amount of interface we have with Hoople or Wye Valley Trust? So that's my main question, and then I can ask my other one afterwards. If that's okay.
Yeah.
So systems integration, I have to say, is to anyone who works in the IT field, is one of the biggest challenges we all come across. So we can't say to our partners, you must make your systems available to work with ours. Equally, what we do is we try to design our systems to be from an open perspective, that we can share data, but straight away, as soon as you get into that, I think Councillor Driscoll mentioned GDPR, privacy, sharing, things like that. You've got to, we then have to cover those sorts of things. So you've got coded connection issues, you've got to speak through moving data around. But to address your very first point is where it's you report a pothole, that's not the journey. The journey is you report the pothole is then repaired, and then you are then notified that that pothole has been repaired. And that's the sort of thing that we're looking to design, so that it's not a case of fire and forget and you're just left about it. It's making it more interactive, so you're actually informed it's done. But that therefore requires us to then link our systems with whoever's going to replace BBLP, because we need to know that that pothole's been, in that point, has now been targeted, it's been done a job, it's been filled, it comes back in, and then you, the end client, are then informed that that has been done. So it's not rocket science, it needs careful thinking and good design, and things like AI can help us do that.
Thank you. That answers that. Yes, it's that closure of that circle, isn't it? Thank you. Yeah, I understand the problems between working with partners, but I do feel that that is an area where partners need to sit down and have a really good think about how seamless working. The other thing I was it might be me not understanding digital and data and technologies when there's other people do. And I wasn't sure about the bring your own device part of it. So we're talking about making hardware savings. So I'm wondering whether, is that so maybe we're saving on a mobile phone contract because we are giving our staff the opportunity to just have one phone in their pocket. So just for me, what exactly is the benefits of bring your own device and what is it?
So again, very valid question. So bring your own device. What that has done is that is not something we're implementing to save money. It is effectively as an issue, and I think it was the chair raised one of the questions that was it one of the PGCs that he would like to have the ability to see his work emails on his laptop at home. So that's what bring your own device means, or you can have it on your phone. So that gives you the ability to do that. You're now gaining access through a non-Herefordshire Council device, a user access device, to gain access into our network, and therefore we have to therefore put in place certain security procedures to make sure you've got that there, and then we also then have to have certain agreements that when you've got council documents now on your laptop, you have to be aware of that, and that you can't just deal with them willy-nilly and send them around the internet and things and so on and so forth. So there's and that's why I think the chair will agree. I think you've been given the documents. You enter into an agreement with us to say what you will do and what you can't do. So that's what bring your own device. It's nothing to do with saving money. It is to do with making end users' lives, from their perspective, easier and better.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fagan, then I have Councillor Cornthwaite, and I have currently nobody else on my list. Now I have Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. I think transformation is always a difficult process, and maybe not as fast as we hope, because of it's about changing cultures also. What I'm concerned about is that we don't end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm a rural ward councillor, so I have a lot of elderly people in my ward, and yesterday I was at a Winter of Wellbeing cafe, and we had some elderly people there, and it was fantastic. There was a fantastic community broker there who was able to create that link between the digital world and the world of people. And I think that it's really important that as we go along, that this strategy retains that connection, because it's going to take a while for generations to be completely computer literate. And so I'm sure that is part of the strategy, and I just want to make the point that we need to absolutely retain that human element in there. One of the requests that I have regularly from elderly people is about their blue badge reapplication. And even for those that are digitally literate, it's a very, very complicated procedure. It's a complicated form. It's not easy to do. So I think that what we need to do is make sure that as we sort of go further down beyond the foundational stages, that actually these processes are easier for people to undertake. One of the other things that's come up repeatedly over the year is the transition for the public rights of way system from one sort of digital reporting system to another, and the black hole that kind of emerged from that. And I know that people are still struggling with that. So those are internal systems that do not seem to be functioning, and that is a sort of functioning well. Sorry, they probably are functioning, but functioning well, and that is the kind of correlation between Hoople and our council systems, and also inheriting systems from Balfour Beatty. Obviously, we're going into a new phase. So I think that those sorts of systems failing for people or being sort of obstructively difficult don't encourage people to sort of come along on the journey. there is something, as I drove past in Marchbirch this morning, called Tea and Tech, which is a fantastic operation where people can chat as somebody helps them figure out how to use their phone or how to use their laptop. But I think one of the challenges we also face is that as we move into possibly coming towards a kind of post-social media era where people are abandoning social media for their kind of mental health, and we're coming, you know, we've got all those generational issues with social media, is how our digital strategy actually takes that looking forward into account, because social media may be a very different thing in 10 years' time or even in 5 years' time. So it was that. And the other thing that I wanted to say was about the 1.5% who are still within a fast broadband black hole within the county. And again, I happen to have a few of those in my ward, and they would really like to get off Starlink. It's a toxic brand for them, and they do not want to have their broadband accessible only through Starlink. So I think it would be really helpful for those councillors who are in pockets that are still a sort of digital black hole in the county to be updated. What does the past the scheme Fastershire, what does post Fastershire look like for those who still are not properly connected? Sorry, a very broad.
Go ahead, Councillor
Thank you,
Stoddart.
Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fagan. I'll try my best to address each of those issues we go through. So, first of all, digital literacy that Councillor Driscoll had mentioned. You know, one of the things we look to do is to run, as you said, a tea and tech and things like that through Talk Community Hubs, try and roll that out, including it in schools, in our new library and learning centre in Shaw Hall. That will have a specific area to go in and use. So very much, you know, digital literacy is something that we will work to develop and move on. And it's the key thing is to anybody's is you know, any technology you have, you can't break it. All you have to do is switch off and switch it back on again. And it's trying to make people aware that, yeah, if you press that button, oh, it's not going to work. It isn't. It will just reset. So that's the first one. On the blue badge, it's designed both to work on applications on a digital stream, but also on an analog stream. So there's a chap in Bromyard called Fred Clark, who's the ex-mayor of Bromyard. I went to the Falkland Islands in '82, who came and spoke to me at surgery last month and asked me to pass on to the young lady he spoke to on the end of a telephone, who gave him a very, very easy talk through. She did it all for him online. He paid for his £10 with his card online. And so that process exists, and he was extremely thankful for it. I've made Ross and his team aware of it so that recognition goes down, because I think it's very important that where these people are there, they're recognised for doing a very good job. So that will always remain both an analogue and, as I explained to Councillor, that we will have that digital. We won't have a digital exclusion policy. We'll have everything to cover there. On to PROW. One of the problems we've got is that our website, to which we report everything on the footpaths, etc., is not the greatest. We all accept that. We're making steps at the minute, but the first bit we have to do with that is the content management system. Doesn't affect anybody, but it's all the bits behind it. We've got to get all those bits in place, and once that's all done, then the front end will then start to develop. So that's on the PROW. Social media, who knows what 10 years will say, but certainly it's making people aware again that if you've got some technology, you don't have to use it. It's your choice. And if you wish to step away, there's that button, just step away from it. The 1.5%, as you say, which is digitally disadvantaged. So Fastershire, as I said, stopped last year. That delivered, so in 2016, when it was started to be delivered by BT OpenView, who were the planners for it, it was designed to deliver 30 megabits to all the homes in the country, including Herefordshire. So we started rolling that. That was then delivered by BT OpenView, where it went, it was fibre to the cabinet, but copper then to the end home. In 2018, the decision was taken to change that, and it was going to be fibre straight to the home. So what we've ended up with is we've now delivered 30 megabits to 98.5% of the homes in Herefordshire. We've delivered fibre to 75% of the homes in Herefordshire. Now, those homes may not have 100 megabit, 500 megabit, but it's available to them if they wish to avail themselves of that option. You're quite right, however, Councillor Fagan, there are spots all around, particularly the Golden Valley is not particularly good, and there's hotspots out towards Ledbury that haven't got it. But that's been picked up then by Project Gigabit, which is the second phase. And that's a requirement that everyone has 100 megabits. The problem is, previously under Project Fastershire, we had an officer here, namesake of mine, Ian Stoddart, who ran the project on our behalf. Project Gigabit is run by the Home Office in Croydon. So we've now lost our own officer. We have to work through them. And it's through Building Digital UK is the name of the organisation. The problem they've done on that, they've broken their delivery mechanisms, not by county, but by old telephone exchanges. So we've now got the eastern part of Herefordshire is linked to the part of Gloucestershire and part of Worcestershire. You've then got the northern part of Herefordshire is linked with Powys, and so it's not as simple as we expect. But they are working with, as I say, Building Digital UK, working with providers, GigaClear's one, some others, and they will then roll that out and pick everyone up. So eventually, that last 5%, that last 1.5% are always the challenging ones. And that's why one of the offers that we offered, some of these remote areas, you can wait for Project Gigabit to pick you up 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or we can deliver you and we'll install Starlink for you, but you have to then pay the running costs. And that's what a number of farms and local sites have got. But we will look to replace that as we roll Project Gigabit through. I think that's me. I'll hand over to Rosie just to pick up any of the bits I may have missed.
Thank you, Councillor Stoddart and Councillor Fagan. I think Councillor Stoddart's covered everything that was on my list, but I just wanted to come back to you in relation to the point of co-production and the learning from the work that we've done in relation to some of the projects implemented and that have left blockages, barriers within customer journeys, etc. I think we spoke about it earlier, but developing that feedback loop through the projects that we do to support us to learn from those and ensure that we then bring that learning through and into further digital projects will only support us to get better at that, and having our residents actively involved in the shaping and the testing and the delivery of some of these key programmes would be critical for us, because everybody's customer journey is different and everybody's point of access at the point of time that they want it is different. So it's really important that we work to understand how it is people want to interact with us. And I mentioned it earlier on in our conversation this morning in relation to digital by design and not digital by default. We do have a number of customer contact points within communities that aren't technically a customer service contact centre, however, in somebody's mind, because of how they've interacted with the community and how they feel about that customer contact point, people expect to be able to interact with certain venues in ways in which that they can get things done when they go into them. So, for example, libraries is a really good one. Over the past number of years, before some of us around the table here were working with the council, the customer service operating model came out of a number of libraries when actually people are still entering into libraries and expecting to be able to do bits and pieces like blue badges, etc. So as we then start to redesign our customer service target operating model, again, and it goes back to Councillor Stark's point earlier, the ability to align some of the key strategies for the council at the moment is unique, and we are about to redesign our library strategy, and we should absolutely be bringing all of that together so that everything that we do from a customer perspective is aligned. So just to give that assurance, if it didn't come through earlier, I just want to provide the assurance that in terms of how we approach our work moving forward, co-production will be at the core of everything that we do.
Okay. Right, I have Councillor Cornthwaite, then Councillor Harvey, and I think Councillor Harvey will probably be the last. I see two other councillors possibly, but you'll want to have enough time to talk about finance. So, Councillor Cornthwaite.
Yeah, fortunately my question was answered by Councillor Stoddart, and I thank him for that. And that was, I just want to thank you that there is that point where you can press a button and say, I want to speak to someone, because that is great customer service to be able to do that. And I want to thank Rosie for that phrase, listening, learning and growing. I think that's an absolutely great thing. And I think as a council, we need to make sure that that strapline is out there for people. I just think let's continue to be a model to other people on some of the work that you're doing. And I'm really thrilled to have heard what you've shared.
Go ahead.
To pick up on Councillor Contrick's comments, so Rosie's team went up to Telford and Wrekin 2 weeks ago to engage with them and find out what have they done through their digital journey and how can we learn from it. And we've got a very good rapport with them. So again, we're speaking with other councils to learn from them so that when we roll these things out, we're actually rolling them out. And Councillor Gandhi's bent my ear many a time about the telephone, the housing telephone issue, and I've given her my personal assurance that we have learnt that lesson from that rollout, and we will certainly make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really welcoming of this this strategy. It's great to see it, and it's great to see the range of digital issues that it's covering. My reading of it is that this is very much about how the council is planning and preparing to go on its own digital journey. And of course we can't we can help to support, but we can't influence ultimately how everybody else in the council in the county engages with digital and the internet and all the other things that are out there. But certainly in terms of how we plan to manage our own business and how we integrate knowledge that we own, share information amongst our own services, and encourage our partners to work with us in sharing their information appropriately too. That's very much within our ownership and control, and it's great to see how we're thinking about this. I think one of the things in terms of the way that the report is structured, I mean, apart from numbering of paragraphs and things like that, that it would be really helpful to have just in terms of being able to reference things within the document. That's just a formatting issue. But I think it would be helpful to be able to see that separation of how we're planning to do things for ourselves, and maximising the digitisation and sharing of data and knowledge management and integration within the council, and then how we are approaching projecting that outwards, taking into account that we have to be inclusive, we have to recognise that there are different ways in which we always are going to need to be able to enable people to engage with us. I think that's helpful. But also, I think what I'm not getting a sense of here, but is a really important, and it may be part of the transformation strategy rather than this, but I think it's important that we get that link across, is how the things that we're doing here are laying the foundations to enable significant digital transformation in the way that services are delivered outwards. Not just enabling the services that we already provide to be delivered in new ways, but also new services. And it's really important in doing that we understand and manage that delivery journey for that transformational foundation building, so that services can be confident in the work they need to do to develop and explain to people how new services will be being enabled or will be changed in the way that they're received as a consequence of being able to be sure that those digital foundations are there for them. And again, I'm not kind of seeing that here, but I'm guessing this is only part of a bigger jigsaw puzzle that will become visible when the transformation programme comes. So heads up, I kind of like to see that connection there when that happens. personal experience, I'm really, as a councillor, I'm encouraging every time I get an email from a member of the public about something that could be helpfully done using the My Account function or the Report It function. I'm encouraging people to, I'm putting links in my emails saying, you know, have you thought about setting up an account? You can report stuff this way, and then you can receive information about how that defect report is being responded to and actioned. And I'm also using that My Account function myself to report defects and be able to track them. Unfortunately, I'm going out and I'm seeing a pothole filled. Great. What I'm not seeing is the update of my report on my account showing that that's happened. So if I was a member of the public, I'm not receiving the confidence as a councillor that all the encouragement I'm giving members of the public to open these accounts, to report digitally and all the rest of it, that all of the internal information updating is going on to make the whole system work. And so I'm a little bit kind of uncertain as to how confidently I should be promoting this with the public if my own personal experience is demonstrating that, you know, the loop isn't working. So if you could kind of comment on that and what might be being done to address some of those teething problems, let's call them, that would be great. And finally, what are we doing to make sure that Councillor Stoddart mentioned, you know, GDPR and making sure that, you know, we're handling information correctly, and absolutely right. But we should not be hobbling ourselves unnecessarily, and we should be seeking permissions to enable the council to use data that people provide us with in a way that maximises the utility of that information, both in addressing those people's issues, but also helping us as a council to understand what's going on in the county and how we are working in a one council way. So some assurance as to how we are seeking the permissions to enable us to maximise the utility of information that people share with us would also be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. So what I would bring you back to, you mentioned the customer journey piece of, and thank you very much for embracing that and putting it forward to your residents and your members to use that. I do exactly the same. And the benefit, of course, once you've got your My Account, you log on, you haven't got to then re-put all the information in because it tells you who you are and makes it much quicker and smoother.
I often forget who I am, so that's really
But I did mention, I think it was Councillor Fagan or Councillor Bartlett, we're looking to get that customer journey redesigned such that when you put the information in, the pothole is then filled, and then you're informed that the pothole has been filled or the action has been done. And that's one of the, we're looking for the new customer strategy to include that in there, so that will be done. What I would draw your attention to is, we're talking about the DDAT, but that sits under the transformation strategy. And in here, one of the areas we're looking at is data, intelligence and performance. And what we need to do to improve is limitations in our performance, information and organisational intelligence leads to limitations in our ability to plan strategically for the long term, to understand and demonstrate impact, learn and improve. And we've got a pile of KPIs that we'll then look to deliver. And these are the bits that I've mentioned will be added to the Q1 performance report as an addendum to that. So we'll be reporting on as we go through. And then at the beginning, there's 8 of these areas, one of which is customer. What do we need to improve? We need to modernise our customer service offer in line with the expectations and changing needs of our customers. Our model needs to be flexible, enabling and responsive in recognition of our diverse and rural communities. So that has to expect that those who wish to go with us on a digital journey can. Those that wish to remain analogue and speak to an individual, it's their right that they retain that as well. But as I said, this is going to Cabinet soon and will then be issued. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Really good points that you raised, and I totally agree with you, as you know that I would, in relation to the alignment of the key strategies, and it's something that we spoke about this morning. And that's really important that we do that, because unless there's that explicit coming together across those key enabling strategies, work then starts to do that rather than starts to do that. So I'm with you and can provide assurance that there'll be the crossover between those key pieces that we are looking to implement. You raise a really good point in relation to partnership working and using data technology to enable improved partnership working. And I think back to a children's scrutiny that Councillor Fagan and I were on a couple of months ago in relation to how we can better do that. So, for example, in relation to the delivery of early help type models in children's services, we can only do those well if our partners are able to effectively share information around children, young people, families, etc. in a way that's safe and appropriate. I will agree with you, it does not feature in this version of the strategy, yet it absolutely should moving forward, and I'll take that as an action, Councillor Stoddart, and make sure that we do include it. It's implicit in what we do, but I think it's helpful to make that explicit so that partners, people, the public can see what we're actively doing in relation to delivering services through better partnership sharing. In relation to my account, that does have issues, it does have challenges, and we do have our project team and our Hoople team working together as we seek feedback through the customer journeys. We get people's experiences in relation to how that facility works for them. We then have a programme of improvements that we're running through. It's not a perfect system, but the more feedback we can gather, the more insights we can get, the more changes and developments we can make. Getting my account functioning well, again, is going to be key and foundational to any further customer transformation that we do. None of us in this room would want to launch a whole new customer service target operating model on the My Account that we have now. So there is a development programme sitting around that facility at the moment. Was that all the questions? Is there one that, I think that's it.
Yeah, could I just come back, and I'm not sure whether it's Councillor Stoddart or you, Rosie, that I need to direct this at, but, you know, the My Account function has a My Requests tab on it, which lists all of the defect and report it reports that anybody makes. And it already has the function to provide updates on the status of the reports that are made. It's not just a one-way sort of transmit and a log of requests submitted. I have got some that have been closed off, but I can see many more that have been completed where I think it must be there's some element of the Balfour Beatty connection that means that the feedback is not coming through. And I think we need to fix this quickly in order to give the public confidence that it's worthwhile them engaging with us digitally in order to get the benefit of being personally updated as to where their defect reports have got to.
Yes, very quickly, I'm keen to move us along, but yeah.
So that is actually a manual process at the minute. So someone in Balfour is going in, finding and then updating and send you that. What we're saying now is that as part of our new strategy, that will be automated. So that will be a lot quicker and smoother.
Okay. So we are nearly out of time. I am going to give Councillor O'Driscoll and Councillor Crockett very quick questions, but I'm going to have one first. So I just want to kind of tie in a few things that have come out in this discussion about the kind of KPIs for the delivery of the strategy, the idea that we want to be a learning organisation, and this kind of iterative approach, and just get some sense of where the council, where the administration would like the council to be in terms of our ability to use data intelligence learning in 3 years' time compared to where we are now. Just what is that direction of travel, and where should we see that sort of appearing in the transformation strategy, or in this strategy, or where? In as quick a response as you like.
I'll be as quick as possible. So it will be primarily through the transformation strategy, because as I explained at the very beginning, the DDAT together with the customer service strategy and the others, that supports the transformation strategy. So therefore that's where we would see it. And the KPIs, as I say, sit inside there in those 7 areas that I've mentioned and will be included as an addendum to the Q1 performance report going forward in the next financial year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Driscoll, then Councillor Crockett, ask your questions together, and then...
I'll keep it very brief. Just under my account, you might remember, I know as far as the members' working development group, we're very keen that it should be enhanced for members so that when a member logs in, you can see all of the issues within your ward and you can see all the planning applications within your ward. I know that would be of huge value to members moving forward, and just say that publicly. I had one question, which was the AI Ethics and Governance Board, which is referred to quite hearing a lot. Who is it? Who sits on it? Who are the councillors that are on it, please? Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Crockett, you're the final question.
Do they not want to answer that one? Oh, right, okay. So, sorry, this is basically the last question then on social care digitalisation. We'll be upgrading the social care management system Mosaic to the latest version 24.1. I thought this had already been done. And if it hasn't, I just want to know if it's going to be a standalone system, or are we going to piggyback like we did in 2017 Mosaic and Face, and in 2019 Mosaic and Abacus. Anything that we can do to help social workers get their information on the system that's clear and easy to use is welcome.
Who would like to take those?
I think those are both with me, Chair. So in terms of the AI Ethics and Governance Board, that's been set up for the Council to ensure that any exploration and bringing on board of AI technologies is safe, it's ethical, and we understand the risks in relation to bringing those into the organisation, because whilst they're enabling tools, they will always present us some risk. In relation to the membership, in the interest of time, very happy to share the terms of reference and the membership for that board, if that would help, Chair, if that just in the interest of time, I can do that. And then in relation to the development of Mosaic and the upgrade of that system, the reason which we needed to do that, again, as I said at the start of our session today, technology moves really, really quickly, and we as an organisation need to keep ahead of our upgrades within our systems, because if we let one slip, 2 go by, and then we're on the back foot in terms of our ability to integrate those systems with any other systems that either we or our partners want to use. So in terms of the upgrade of this particular system, this will enable us to do that. So if we didn't upgrade the Mosaic system, we would have only been able to take that so far in relation to how it is we integrate that with wider systems that we've got within the council and wider. So it is an essential upgrade to enable us to move forward.
So is it standalone?
It is standalone, but it does provide us the opportunity to integrate, if that makes sense. So
and are there any councillors on the board?
In terms of the current AI and Ethics Board, not at present.
You.
Councillor Stoddart has the very last word.
Okay.
I know I keep saying this, but this is the case.
But I would like to say part of the upgrade as well also addresses any cybersecurity issues as well, which is obviously vital.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll, in a moment, we'll consider recommendations. I think I'm getting a sense from the committee that the committee is kind of happy with the actions and the general direction of travel. There's obviously a very strong wish to make sure that this is linked to customer strategy, to the transformation strategy, and those things are seen very clearly, and I'm sure the executives got that message very strongly. I think if we pause the live stream just while we can have a quick discussion on recommendations. Okay. Daniel, have you done your magic?
Sorry, Chair.
Oh.
I'm not actually able to pause the meeting.
Oh.
Which is a new one on me.
I mean, we'll carry on. We're not discussing anything that the public shouldn't see. It's usually just because it's not very interesting to them. But
just give me a couple of minutes and I'll bring those up on the screen for you.
okay. live stream. Daniel will read them out. We can take a vote.
Second, Chair, just to make sure the live stream is perfectly restart. Sorry, just take a time. Yes, I can confirm, Chair, the live stream has been restarted.
Okay, the scrutiny officer will read out the recommendations before we vote on them.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations are as follows. There are 3 recommendations. 1, that Herefordshire Council agrees an action plan to address digital exclusion in the county encompassing digital literacy, cost, infrastructure and other factors. 2, that Herefordshire Council requests an update on work to enhance broadband provision across the county. And 3, that Herefordshire Council provides assurance that the refreshed customer services strategy will drive a review of the digital, data and technology underpinning customer services to ensure it is enabling residents to get the service they require.
Okay, all those in favour of these en bloc? That is carried. Thank you very much for the report and attendance. I suggest we will take a break and reconvene at 25 minutes past and look at the Q3 outturn. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, welcome back to the Scrutiny Management Board meeting. We are moving on now to item 8, which is financial monitoring. I hope that everyone will feel free to bring in item 9 at the same time, which is the performance monitoring report. So I hope that we can talk about financial outturn and performance outturn in the same conversation where that is possible. The way I hope to structure this conversation is to look first at the revenue position, and then in particular we'll look at savings. We'll look at we might jump community wellbeing, look at community wellbeing next, children's services, the DSG deficit in particular, environment and economy. A little opportunity if we've missed anything in doing that, and then we'll move on to looking at the capital position in the round, if everybody is happy with that. Councillor Stoddart, Rachel, would you like to say anything by way of setting the scene? You will be aware members have had ample opportunity to read the budget. They've had ample opportunity to talk to you about the budget, so it should just be, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Rachel Sanders, Director of Finance. This Q3 report presents the forecast outturn position as at the 31st of December 2024, so that's 3/4 of the way through the 24-25 financial year. The forecast outturn for the year is a net overspend of £7 million, with expected management and recovery actions to reduce that to a position by the end of the year of £1.1 million. It's worth noting at this point that we are bucking the national trend in terms of that forecast. This is a year in which 30 councils have successfully applied for exceptional financial support. And I just wanted to highlight that that outturn forecast position is not the result of luck. It's the result of significant strong financial management, both in year and over a number of financial years, to get Herefordshire in this stable financial position. We've still got a lot of work to do, and there are 4 working days remaining in this financial year, but we've been continuing our work in Q4 with strong expenditure controls, managing expenditure over that final quarter of the year, but also with a close lens on the deliverability of savings to maximise that position by the 31st of March. In terms of that work that continues, we've got to reconcile activity data as part of our close down procedures, and we've got a focus on that over the coming weeks. The report also highlights the delivery of savings in year, and we need to recognise that it's been a challenging year across the country for all councils in the context of increasing demand, costs and complexity of care, and to deliver savings of the ambitious nature that we have in the context of that challenging environment. That speaks to kind of that good financial management, but also the challenges that we've faced in year. You're right, the report also highlights the dedicated schools grant, the DSG position, which is one of the most significant risks that councils responsible for SEN provision face in the future years. The capital outturn is a forecast spend of £80 million as at Q3, and we continue to monitor delivery of that over that final quarter, with some further commitments moving into 25-26 in respect of our major projects. Happy to take questions from there.
I thought Councillor Sutherland might want to say something.
Thank you, Chair. I obviously echo everything that Rachel's saying, but I would like to draw the attention and thank my Cabinet colleagues for all of their hard work. First of all, to say thank you to Rachel for the improvements and the quality of the reports that we get every month from her. That was why her and her team won the National Award in November last year for financial reporting. We now get a very detailed report to each of the Cabinet members, which is they then share and work with their directorates to ensure that they know exactly where those monthly positions are, and they keep the thumbs very firmly on the pulse. We've still got the savings boards, so the policy's still in place this year. from last year, and it will carry forward into financial year 25-26, where any expenditure of £500 or more has to be signed off by director. So we've got very tight controls on there, and that, together with the energy and enthusiasm of Rachel and her team, is why we're in such a good and strong position as we are. Thank you.
Okay, we focus first on savings. Councillor Harvey has been first off the blocks, then Councillor Cornthwaite. Anyone else on savings? Councillor Stark? Councillor Crockett? This is just on savings. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to focus on the undelivered savings in the council-wide savings on the Thrive programme, which, as I've mentioned in other forums, seems to be failing to thrive at the moment. It's taken until Q3 for this to go from amber to red, so presumably something's been happening in the first half of the year on this transformation, and I went back and had a look at the savings that were proposed and were considered by this Scrutiny Management Board back in January last year, in the run-up to the budget being approved, to see what this saving was actually proposing to deliver. And its description was maximisation of income generation through service cost recovery, reduction of expenditure through review of third-party spend, and transformation of services through customer acceleration and robotic automation projects, 2.6 million, which all bar about 60k is now being forecast as not to be delivered this year. Now, presumably these savings have been built into base in terms of the budget for the coming year. So what I'd like to ask, seeing as the budget report seems to be completely silent on this particular saving in the savings section, and it merely reports it at the highest level as not being delivered in the section on savings and directorates, if there could be a bit of elaboration as to what happened on this line in the first 6 months of the year, what's gone wrong, and what the impact is of building these assumed savings into base for the coming year on top of the savings that are needing to be delivered in the coming financial year.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think you're absolutely right that it's been challenging to deliver those savings through transformation in 24-25, and it's been challenging. You named the sources of those savings there. We plan to deliver significant savings through a review of service cost recovery, through challenging third-party spend. And what we've seen nationally is that our suppliers are struggling to balance their books and to make their businesses sustainable. And that has meant that our opportunities to negotiate reductions in spend without compromising the quality and the scope of services that we receive has been really difficult. In terms of our service cost recovery and income generation opportunities, we have continued to review those, and unfortunately from a timing perspective and a deliverability perspective, at Q3 it was the right time to review the deliverability of those and confirm those were at risk. That doesn't mean that work has stopped. The transformation programme is very active and re-energised, and a fresh view of the source of each of those savings and the value that can be delivered is underway, and we're committed to completing that review by the end of this financial year to ensure that we have robust, detailed delivery plans in place that have been refreshed to ensure maximum delivery through transformation in those areas and others to deliver the same value of savings in 25-26.
Okay, so if I understand your response correctly, we failed to squeeze other people's pips as much as we were expecting to. But what's been happening on customer acceleration and robotic automation projects? And could you explain exactly what that was?
Happy to take that, Chair. So what we've done so far in relation to the customer acceleration work is review some of our more high volume customer service journeys to understand where the issues and challenges and inefficiencies in our ways of working in relation to delivering those were. Some of those were in E&E, some of those were in corporate services, and we've started to implement some changes in relation to that. I think the language that's been inherited for the organisation through those savings proposals, when we're talking about robotics, etc., we're largely talking about what we were just discussing in relation to digital technology and AI. It's the integration of some AI solutions into customer journeys that improve the accessibility and the experience and the efficiency for customers. So we've started to do some of that work, and through the work we have been able to generate some efficiencies and some savings. But as Rachel said, there is now a renewed focus in terms of how we can do better, do more in relation to that. We spoke about it earlier. We've learned from the work that we've done so far. We've continually reviewed that work, and we have now started to identify opportunities where we can do more. So that's really what that savings line talks about, is the transformation of our customer service journeys, target operating model, and the integration of technology into that, albeit in a complicated way.
Thank you. I just really want to try and understand whether this was ever a real saving. Did we understand where the money was going to be coming from and how it was going to be delivered? Or is this effectively a sum that is balancing the budget?
Go ahead.
It wasn't a sum to balance the budget. As part of the budget setting process, we carry out a detailed review and test the robustness of those delivery plans, and our external auditors also do that as part of their value for money work. We had identified through our contracts register opportunities to investigate to derive that third-party spend reduction, and so there were detailed plans in place as is required as part of our budget setting process.
Okay. Councillor Cornthwaite, then I have Councillor Stark, Councillor Crockett. I'll remind you we're still on savings here, then Councillor Bartlett also on savings. Okay.
Chair, you'll have to forgive me if it's not on savings, because I picked up on...
If it's not on savings, then please don't ask it at this time.
No, well, on the back of being
Councillor Cornthwaite, is it on savings?
I believe it was a subject that Rachel brought up in her introduction, so therefore I felt it was opportune to ask the question. You can have to decide if it's on savings, but you did say some things could overlap in these next. Right, so I was on Audit and Governance yesterday, and I wanted to congratulate both the Director of Finance and a councillor that looks after the finances on the way that everything was presented yesterday in Audit and Governance. So I just really proud to be able to talk about how the two of you work together, and I can explain this at parish council level and every level I go to, is to say how well you two are managing what happens in the council. But just to pick up, Rachel, on what you said about the dedicated schools grant is in a revised position for 2025-26 is a forecast overspend of 11.1 million in 2024-25, which will increase the council's cumulative...
I'm going to stop you there because we are going to specifically talk about the dedicated schools grant.
All right.
So
well, I'm sorry then, Chair, but it was brought in Rachel's thing.
Okay, Councillor Stark.
Yes. Thank you, Rachel, for that further presentation. Can I take us to MERS and the fact that we had 4.5 million targeted savings, at risk is 2.4. I know we've had a supplementary amount of data from you which shows about 1.6 of the MERS savings has been spread across the various directorates. I've got two questions then. First of all, is the actual 2.4 million still at risk, or has that been absorbed within the savings, shall we say, recorded elsewhere by the directorates? And second, can I ask Hillary particularly, you're making about 600,000 as a notice in MERS savings. Is that having any impact on the ability of you to deliver the actual outputs you're trying to deliver? Because I notice, obviously, from the budget setting in 25-26 that we had to uplift you by about 12 to 15 million. So I'm interested in, are those savings real, and are the ones still at risk? And certainly in community and wellbeing, is MERS having an impact on your ability to deliver? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So you're absolutely right. We had a 4.5 million savings target at the start of the year at budget setting in respect of our mutual early resignation scheme, MERS. And throughout the year, we have monitored the success in delivery of that particular saving. At the 1st of April, we already had a number of employees who had left the organisation through this scheme, and so those savings were banked and removed from directorate budgets on day one of the financial year. We continue to keep the scheme open through 24-25 to allow further applications, and we considered those within each directorate. What we also did in the first quarter of this financial year was to do an exercise to understand potential conflicts with other areas of savings. So, for example, within the Community Wellbeing Directorate, some workforce reviews were planned. Within E&E, some savings had been identified through changes in the staffing structure. And so where individuals had applied for MERS that may be included in those particular directorate restructures, the MERS saving has been allocated in the first instance against the directorate balance. And that has meant that there has been a gap in the value of savings delivered through the MERS scheme and attributed to that MERS scheme. So to answer your question, yes, they are still at risk. That position is mitigated in 24-25 as part of our financial management of the whole council position. What that means in terms of those at-risk savings, there is a focus in the final quarter of this financial year on how we might deliver those savings at risk in the new financial year. And one of the things that we have done is we've challenged the source of each of those at-risk savings, bearing in mind that they were developed now over 12 months ago as part of setting of the 24-25 budget. Do we still think it's realistic that that saving and that value can still be delivered from the 1st of April 25? And if it isn't, alternative savings have to be identified with a detailed plan outlining the specific activity and cost centre where that saving will be achieved, in order that we carry through that requirement that the 25-26 budget is balanced on the proviso that savings are delivered in full in 24-25.
So it's still a risk to the 25-26 budget at the moment?
At quarter three, it's assessed as at risk in terms of the source of that particular savings target. But as we move into the 1st of April 25, we will have detailed plans in place, and we wouldn't assess a savings plan at risk at day one. So we will have a robust plan to ensure we can deliver those savings from 25-26.
And if I could just touch upon the community and wellbeing, thank you.
Thank you. So the MERS savings have not impacted on the delivery in the directorate. It's worth saying that as part of the MERS scheme, certain posts were protected. So frontline posts like social workers were not eligible for MERS, so we protected those posts in particular. I think it's worth saying the investment in the community wellbeing budget is linked to client, so it's about additional client demand. It is not about new staffing and about increases in terms of inflation on packages of care that we've needed to meet. So the investment that has come into the community wellbeing budget for 25-26, for which I'm very grateful, is solely related to clients. It's not about increasing the staffing. What I will say in terms of the savings, through you, Chair, if I may, we did have some savings attributable to staffing, which we're not able to meet through that source that are assessed at risk. And we are looking at alternatives to meet those savings for 25-26, and we have detailed plans ready for the 1st of April.
I have Councillor Crockett, Bartlett, and then Harvey, and I think that will probably be it on savings. But just before Councillor Crockett, you don't need to answer this now, but I guess the thing that I'm interested in, which I hope will come up in questioning, is the impact. This is essentially what the savings that we don't deliver in this financial year become an overspend at the start of the next financial year, and I will be interested in just hearing how the cabinet is thinking about that risk, and how satisfied they are that because it's not easy. I'm not saying. No, I don't think anyone on the committee thinks that this is a simple task, but that's where we find ourselves. But that may come out in these questions. So, Councillor Crockett first.
Thank you, Chair. You and Councillor Stark have just stolen my thunder because those are exactly my questions. You know, I'm looking at point 34, delivery of savings in this report, so it is at the right time. But again, you've said increasing cost pressures, demand on the service, how we're going to manage it, and are we managing? And we've done really well. We haven't done as well as we have done in the past, but how can you keep that level up? And with this demographic of people older than the national average of 65, 75 and 85, it is going to increase even more. So yeah, I'm sorry, you've already stolen my thunder. I was going to ask about MERS and the impact that had on the service, but I think we've already covered that, so that's I know.
Councillor Gandy and Hilary Hall both have their hands up, so they fight it out.
Whether it was the same, I don't know. I mean, Councillor Cockett has absolutely summed it up for us. When we set out on the financial year, I think we were fairly confident that we would be able to achieve the savings as we have done previous years, and we would be in a better position than we are now. And I don't think anybody within our directorate is not disappointed that we are unable to do that. But just to give you a flavour, which is why we are where we are, and goodness knows what will happen when the announcements are made today. The number of people that we are dealing with physical disabilities who are in residential care has gone up by 23%, and the number in domiciliary care has gone up by 21%. And in relation to the average costs of residential care, that's increased by 19%, and that means that a residential placement now is an additional £9,300, and at the rate that we're going, that will equate to an additional £2.1 million per year. And that's if we don't have a significant increase in the number of people requiring it. And I think, as I've said before at this meeting, and I am one of them, there was a large increase in birth rate after the Second World War, and those people are now reaching the age of about 80. And so we are dealing with not only people living longer but less healthy, but we're dealing with a lot more people living longer and less healthy. On top of that, our temporary accommodation, which is not ideal by any means, when I last reported it, I think it was to a cabinet meeting, there were 1,300 people in temporary accommodation. That's now increased since April 2024, and that's now increased to 1,400 people.
I think you mean people accepted as homeless?
Yep.
Yeah, not in temporary accommodation.
No, accepted as homeless and being put into temporary accommodation. So the scale of what we are trying to deal with is something that I think we just haven't. It's unprecedented, and the difficulty we've got. We will obviously have to carry some of the savings over. We will make the savings, but we also will make sure that the people that we serve get the best care that they possibly can. And to me, that is the most important thing for us.
Okay, I have Councillor Bartlett and Councillor Harvey, and then... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's just very quickly, Chair, if I may. It was just to give some assurance to Councillor Crockett and to the Scrutiny Management Board in terms of the savings. We have detailed savings plans for the savings. It's not that we weren't working on them, but we just haven't delivered them in this current year, but we will deliver them next year. We have a savings board that meets monthly that keeps rigorous oversight of that within the Directorate. So it was more to give you assurance that we have the processes in place to ensure that we do deliver against those savings.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you. So I have two questions. First of all, I'll start on the health, if that's okay, seeing as it's follow on from this. When I'm looking at the variances in the savings, so the Directorate Community Wellbeing had a forecast overspend of 5.7 million. So when you break it down to begin with, you're talking about cost pressures of 3.3 million and savings targets at risk of 2.4 million. The whole conversation around the table and going forward is about rising pressures. So we were already adrift by 2.4 million before we started incurring all of these additional pressures. So what worries me is this spike of additional national insurance, older people, homeless, etc., etc. Is this a spike that we were not predicting well enough? Is this the new normal now? And also, if we're so adrift and we spent so many years congratulating ourselves about how well community was doing, in hindsight, do we think, given the uplift of the budget we've just set, do we think that we've been adequately funding this service, or have we just been hoping it's going to be all right?
Just so I can see lots of hands. So just before we get, so I just want to. This could feel like Scrutiny is sitting there going, "You haven't done your sums right," and I genuinely don't think that's where the committee is coming from. The committee is coming from.
I'm certainly not, Chair.
Yeah,
I'm trying.
Yeah,
to
this is a
understand.
risk to the council, and we would like to understand how the risk is being mitigated. So I hope that we are having that conversation in that frame. So who wants to go first? Councillor Stoddart.
So to address Councillor Bartlett's comment, hope is not one of the things we use. It's down to prudence, hard work, understanding each of our areas, and having the right information to make those decisions. As I say, what we do is work with the finance and directorate teams. We look at identify mitigations. We're looking to reduce, defer, stop expenditures. Hillary's already mentioned, and Carol's mentioned as well, about the monthly budget boards. Those are the directors, service directors, chief execs, and the 151. They sit and look very carefully at what's going through. I've mentioned already the cabinet member engagement with the plethora of information that comes to them. And lastly, we then look at the dedicated savings board, looking at all the risk savings, identify alternate ways to deliver. I'm quietly confident that we will make all the savings this year. And part of that comes down to the fact that we've got the Budget Resilience Fund, which we transferred £11 million from the business rates reserve, and part of that we're looking at £4 million to go in to cover the unexpected demand-led increase within Hillary and Carol's area. Thank you.
Please, Rachel.
Thank you. Yeah, just to pick up on your point, Chair, about the purpose of this is to provide assurance. So you're absolutely right. There's a £3.4 million cost pressure in the community wellbeing budget in 24-25. That's about 4% of budget. Now, in terms of building that into 25-26 budget to provide assurance that we are adequately funding that directorate, as part of budget setting, as close as December, we review the activity data, we review the number of clients, we review the care requirements, and we quantify those to build the budget. So in terms of that 24-25 position, it's a 3.4 overspend on a budget of 76.3 million. We also, in the final quarter of the year, look at the run rate, so how much is that directorate spending to deliver services, because the clients that we are responsible for on the 31st of March 2025 are still the clients we're responsible for on the 1st of April. So we have a really good understanding of the cost pressures that we are taking through into the new financial year. The Directorate has a budget of £90.7 million for 25-26. So at this point, based on the information we have available to us and the client numbers and our expectation of the way that their care needs will change, we do believe it's adequately funded. And that's not a guess, that's based on evidence and activity data and close collaboration between the finance team and those service teams. It's always really disappointing when there's a big variance at quarter one, and so the way that we ensure that we've captured all of that activity data is to work really closely, as close as we can to that budget setting deadline, to make sure that we've captured all of those costs and the pressures.
Thank you, Rachel, for that assurance.
Sorry, I was going to go back and mention that, so to pick up on Rachel's point, that the budget that's been set, there's comments from in our audit report, external auditor's report, which state that the budgets that we have set are reasonable and are appropriate and are fully funded. So that's actually in the auditor's report. So it's, again, it's not hope; it's done on sound principles.
Thank you, and I think that's additional assurance that Hillary's that directorate's budget will be starting the new financial year, hopefully on the front foot and not on the back foot this time, and that we are adequately going to be able to meet those increasing needs. I'm quite happy to move on to my second question, unless there was anything you wanted to add? Okay. So my second question, if I may, Chair.
As long as it's quick.
It is. Well, there's one question and one comment. So my question around savings is, when I'm looking at the use of interest income to pay off our little bit of deficit, little large deficit that we've got, particularly around Thrive and what have you, using money that's come through growing our interest is to pay off our gaps. To me, doesn't feel like a saving. It feels more like robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so when it says so when we're using, so in Central, the 4.6 underspend is additional interest and income. Whether we could have, if we didn't have these deficits, would we actually have then had 4.6 million more revenue that we could have done something different with, which would have created more value, extra value for our residents? So that's my question, and my sticking with MERS, my worry comment is, if we don't manage to make the savings on MERS going forward, will we end up looking at making staff redundant to bridge that gap? So.
Okay, that's two questions. One should be a simple yes/no. If we didn't have those gaps, we could have spent that money somewhere else. Is that?
I'd like to say it's not a simple yes/no. Sorry, Chair. We've earned 1.9 million in interest above budget in 24-25, and we're not classifying that as a saving. We're being explicit that that is a positive variance on budget, and that's not a win. That's as a result of focused treasury management activity. This is us reviewing our cash flow position daily and making sound treasury management decisions to gain best return on our cash balances and our available resources. So we've been explicit about that in the report at each quarter, highlighting that positive variance to budget. What we are doing as part of financial management arrangements is considering the whole council position, and we are using that interest income, that resource available to the council, to mitigate the position in year. We could do something else with it, but that would require us then to fund the overspend from reserves. And so we are looking top down at the whole council position and protecting the reserve balances and managing through to the 31st of March in the context of all of those challenges that we've discussed today, the demand, cost pressures and the challenges we've experienced in delivering savings through transformation. So it's one of the tools that we have available to us. It's been used in previous financial years as a method of mitigating overspend, but we've been transparent about the way that we are accounting for that and the way that it's reported.
Just before you answer the other question, whoever's going to handle that, I just want to force the committee. SMB has had a different view on the executive around how we represent this interest payment in accounts, and I'd rather not. And we've had a recommendation response. I'd rather not rehearse that in this meeting. I'm not saying we can't come back to it ever, but just to forestall anyone who might want to get into that. And then your point was about MERS and whether if we haven't made those savings, we might need to move.
If we haven't made those, still haven't made those savings, whether we're going to have to start looking at making redundancies to bridge that gap, which I would put actually to to Councillor Stoddart or the leader, because I think it's a question that the minority administration should be answering rather than our officers.
I'll do that. So it's certainly our intention for no one to be made redundant or lose their job. What we're looking to do is make those savings through where vacancies sit currently. That's where we may be looking to take the savings, so that not an individual, it's a vacant post.
Okay, we have spent quite a lot of time on savings, which I make no apology for because it's very important, but Councillor Harvey has the last point here, and I'm sure she will make it as succinctly as possible.
We'll see, shall we? I can understand that the administration may want to maintain the good news narrative on children's by separating out the runaway costs of SEND and home to school transport services ahead of handing these off to Mr Cook's directorate next financial year. Nevertheless, the spiralling cost of these important services has got to be gripped by somebody. We were being told 18 months ago that PricewaterhouseCoopers had all the answers in this area as our transformation partners. And, you know, on top of the overspend that we've got in the revenue budget, we also have an undelivered 200k that, you know, we keep being told had very clear plans for how that saving was going to be delivered. What's happened to that?
In terms of the 200k savings target, that's assessed as at risk and reported at Q3, and that's part of a wider home to school transport review. Rosie, as Director of Transformation Strategy, is the Senior Responsible Officer for that review, and we are working with external partners and the transformation team to do a thorough analysis of our current position in order to confirm how those savings will be delivered. We've also got the item in the capital programme for 25-26 to give us the opportunity to investigate a council-owned fleet to alleviate some of those revenue budget pressures.
The PricewaterhouseCoopers get out of jail free card jam tomorrow promise that we were told about 18 months ago? What happened to that?
I think we are using the learnings and findings from that report to inform the action plan that will go forward into 25-26 for delivery of those savings and reductions in the revenue cost pressures.
Okay. We have the Director of Children's Services has been summoned by Ofsted, so I think we will move on to community wellbeing next. I imagine Councillor Crockett may have. Do you have anything else to ask about? So, does anybody else have anything that hasn't been covered on community wellbeing? I have Councillor Harvey. Anybody else? Then Councillor Harvey, please go for it.
Thank you. Yes, it's been really tough this year, hasn't it? You know, you've got a perfect storm. We've got a residential care market that might not match the demand in terms of the mix of residential facilities that we've got. We've got a significant private funder market in the county, and you know, because everybody's living longer, hooray! We're finding that, you know, potentially there are private funders who are coming to the end of their ability to fund themselves, who are flopping into our laps. And we've also got an increasing number of people who've been kept out of the residential care sector by being cared for in their own homes, who are, you know, ending up on very high care packages. And we can see from the Q3 figures that the ability that we thought we might have to reduce high care package costs has not in reality been able to be delivered, whether you look at it as a saving or whether you look at it as cost pressure. I'm sure it's a mixture of the two. It's just not been working. So my question is, are we still committed to getting back into the residential care market ourselves as a council? And what is the, you know, are we actually going to be delivering on that in a time frame which is going to help us with addressing this perfect storm?
Yes, it is working. The short answer is yes. So we are working up the business case in terms of care facility. I think where we are looking is where are we having the greatest amount of spend over a longer period. So what we're tending to see with, be careful with my language, but we tend to see a lot of turnover through older people through our books. It's a horrible way of putting it, but I can't think of a better way. What we are seeing is increasing complex needs of working age adults who are with us for a long time. Their needs, they are living longer but with more complex needs, and that is where a lot of our money is being, or our expenditure is going. So the work we're doing around the business case is looking at, can we invest in care facilities and probably a mixture, modular form of those that will enable us to mitigate that pressure in particular, because that's an ongoing one that will keep on being with us. At the same time, we're also looking at what other options there are around support for people living in their own homes, as well as working with providers in the market, and can we attract new people into the market as well. So it's a multi-pronged approach to it, but certainly in terms of looking at what we can invest in terms of our own funding, we are building that detailed business case as we speak, which will come forward to Cabinet in due course.
Okay, can I just add to the perfect storm, as I say in that directorate, the impact of PIP reductions, which would presumably will essentially be picked up by the council in a lot of cases, and Councillor Gandy's already mentioned it, but homelessness and it looks to me like homelessness is going to inevitably increase for a period of time, and that's bad for people, and it's expensive for the council. And I think when we add up a number of things that we see as kind of financial risks to the council, like perfect storm does feel like a very good description. Councillor Driscoll has one point here, and then we'll move on for community wellbeing.
Yeah, forgive me if I've missed this, but what modelling been done on future demand in adult social care and homelessness, and what's the medium-term cost trajectory, please?
So as part of doing the business case that I referred to, we are doing that modelling at the moment, because obviously the current year was unprecedented in terms of the numbers we've seen coming through. So we're doing that detailed modelling at the moment, which will inform that future years. We're looking at national benchmarks around that, as well as our own data. And we're in the middle of that, and happy to bring that back to your scrutiny committee, or this one, as we go forward. But we are doing that much more detailed modelling now. We've tended to perhaps not been as detailed in the past around that, but we feel that we need to do more of that now. And I think the other bit, if I may, just to add to that, we are in a perfect storm, but we also have a funding model for social care, which is very largely dependent on the council. And there is work we should be doing in terms of our external lobbying around funding reform. Sorry to bring that in, but that is part of this as well. Because we can be as efficient as we can be, and we work really hard to be as efficient as we can be. But at the end of the day, this is also about the lobbying and the external environment that we also have to influence.
But obviously that modelling would feed into that lobbying.
Councillor Gandhi.
Thank you. Yeah, with regard to the people living in temporary accommodation, what we're also doing is a lot of work around trying to prevent people becoming homeless in the first place. So it's about possibly where they've got rent arrears, working with housing associations to try to deal with that. It's where we've got perhaps people who could afford the rent of a private property, but they can't provide the deposit that they need to get into that property. It's about loaning that money to them in order for them to get into the property, and various other means of working with families to try to stop them from becoming homeless in the first place. I'm still waiting for the government to come forward with the bill that says, you know, no blame of evictions will no longer continue, because that is one of the problems that we are facing with. And if we can get that on the statute books, that would probably bring down some of the numbers. But ultimately, whether we like it or not, the cost of private rented accommodation in Herefordshire is high. It's higher than elsewhere. I've this weekend been to Somerset and looked at the prices of rented accommodation in Somerset, and you'd be surprised to think that it is actually cheaper there than it is here. And that's the sort of thing that we're having to look at to try to stop people becoming homeless in the first place.
Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Chair. Just to address Councillor Harvey's one of the points about it's all being good news. That's not what we try to do. We are doing everything in a very transparent and open way, and we're not trying to hide or dilute the challenges we face. I think our reports show where these things are, and where we are challenging and we're struggling, we make it very clear in there. So it's not just all good news. And that's not only just here in the Q3 budget report, but it's also in the performance report. We hold our hands up when things are not there or we're missing. We hold up and we in that open that spirit of transparency and openness. We want everyone to see where we are.
Okay, let's just follow that through, because at some point I was going to bring this point in. It might as well be here. So when you add up things like the risk that the DSG deficit may come back onto the council accounts, the discussion we've just had about community wellbeing and the growth in demand, the increasing cost for home to school transport and send transport, which we're trying to address, but there's a possibility that we may not be able to control those costs. We don't know what the government is going to do in its settlement, but I think we can guess it's not going to be the sort of level that we would like. I happened to be subbing in ESSG on Monday, and there's an amount of money that we're waiting for the government to support food waste delivery, and we don't know if we're going to get. So when you add this up, there's a kind of risk spread, and at one end of the risk spread, things look very dire indeed. And so I'd like to understand how the Cabinet is thinking about that cumulative risk and working through that kind of scenario. So
thank you, Chair. So obviously, as I mentioned yesterday at the Audit and Governance, we were discussing the risk management strategy. DSG is a significant risk for us. It's certainly in my personal risk, it's one of the highest that we have. it's £17.1 million. From our position, due to the hard work and the prudence and the resilience that we've had for a number of years, if the decision was taken that it's actually got to be accountable for that, that's £17.1 million, it will not cause us and lead us to go into a 114 action. Our reserves are sufficient to cover that. That is not the situation across many other councils. If they're forced to accept their DSG onto their books, they will be in serious financial issues. We will not be, and I want to make that very clear to everyone that if the government do not extend the March 31st 26 limit, then it will not lead us to 114 action. We are definitely okay. But it is something that we need to address, and it may be something that I would like to offer to you, Chair, to your members. DSG is such a challenging issue. Is that something that perhaps you, as the SMB, or one of your working groups or your task and finish groups, could look at for us? We would appreciate any assistance we can get on it. Thank you.
Rachel, and then Councillor Harvey may want to make a similar point to me, so we'll...
I just wanted to thank you for giving me a list of things that will create sleepless nights hereinafter. You're absolutely right, and everything that you said on your list are the risks that we are facing as a council, as are all other local authorities nationally. What I would say, and I don't underestimate the challenges of responding to those in 25-26 or in leading the council through those challenges from a financial perspective. What I would say though, because of our strong financial management and the accuracy of our forecasting, what we've been able to do in Q4 of this financial year, and we haven't done this in any financial year that I've been at the council, and this is my 4th financial year now, is that we've adopted our kind of financial get-ahead strategy. So all of those risks that you have just highlighted on a directorate by directorate basis, those have been the topics of discussion in our budget board meetings. So rather than a focus on understanding where we might end this financial year, we are already looking ahead and considering how we will respond to those challenges and mitigate how we might use the capital programme more in 25-26 to mitigate some of those financial pressures. So I think we have all of those risks and challenges in our sight, and we're understanding the elements that we can control at a local level, and those areas where we need to engage actively now in terms of funding reform and making sure that Herefordshire receives a fair funding deal in that reform planned by central government.
I'm conscious we slipped into DSG, so I welcome members' contribution. That Councillor Harvey wanted to, I think, come back on some of this discussion.
Yeah, well, I was really just wanting to pick up on your mention of risk, Chair, and I know that the risk management strategy was at Audit and Governance yesterday, but the corporate risk register itself was not, and it hasn't actually been published since March last year for Audit and Governance, and I'm just wondering, given that we have been talking about the variety of risks that the council is facing and how we're assessing and managing those, I've failed to find the corporate risk register published anywhere on the council website outside of an Audit and Governance agenda in March last year, and I'm just wondering where it sits and how it is made visible so that we can understand what its content is as opposed to the process by which it is built and managed.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and you're absolutely right, Councillor Harvey. The risk management strategy went to Audit and Governance Committee yesterday, because that committee has been engaged in the review of risk management arrangements in this financial year, and it's the responsibility of that committee to be assured of the effectiveness of risk management arrangements, both through observing the strategy and its implementation and activity, but also through internal audit and the annual governance statement process. We've refreshed the risk management strategy this year and included a new risk appetite statement, and that's been worked through with our internal auditors, risk management experts through CLT and Cabinet. And that risk management strategy will be approved by Cabinet at their meeting in early June, accompanied by the corporate risk register, which has been refreshed again in order to make sure that it contains the relevant strategic corporate risks. And without getting into too much detail on that, the risk strategy is aligned to those risks which prevent delivery of the priorities of the council plan, in order to make it a focused strategy for Herefordshire Council. That corporate risk register will then be included in the quarterly monitoring reports that are presented to Cabinet. But that refresh doesn't mean that risk management activity hasn't been underway throughout the year, and the effectiveness of those arrangements will be reported through the annual governance statement to be presented at Audit and Governance Committee in June as part of the statutory accounts, and also by an assessment from internal audit of their annual opinion on the arrangements that we have in place throughout the year.
Well, thank you very much for that. We've always had a more than semantic separation of the process by which risk is managed and the actual risks that are being managed. I liken it to the difference between a pipe and what is flowing through the pipe. So yes, Audit and Governance has always been responsible for the process. It used also to have sight of the corporate risk register itself, and it's been blind to that for 12 months now. And I didn't hear in your response any information about where that corporate risk register is published or made visible to scrutiny, to councillors, to the public, in order to give assurance as to what our understanding of that risk is and what mitigating actions are being taken to reduce the raw risk that is assessed. And I think whilst it's absolutely valid to be going through a process of looking how to improve the process by which we manage our risk, the fact of that risk continues and it's just not available, and it really should be something that Scrutiny and the Scrutiny committees are looking at in terms of the content of the risk register, relevant to the remits of those committees. If Audit and Governance is perpetually told that the content is not its business is purely the process by which that content is derived.
Okay, we'll come to you in a minute. So from my point of view, I share Councillor Harvey's view that Scrutiny should be able to see the risk register and should use it as part of its questioning and work planning. If I understand what you said, the risk register will be published in June and then quarterly after that. Just if you've got anything further to add, please do.
Just to agree that it absolutely should be a visible document. It's going to be used, and it is used to inform our internal audit plan, and will be used, I imagine, to inform the work programme of Scrutiny Management Board. So it will be visible. It's not intended to be hidden away, and I absolutely agree with you that it should be a visible document. We should be held to account for the risks that we are managing and the mitigations and controls that we put in place. Our other risks are in plain sight as well. So as part of the budget setting and the financial medium-term financial strategy, as well as all of our decision reports, we are highlighting those risks, and that risk management activity is underway. It needs refreshing, it needs some consistency, it needs some challenge, it needs some best practice injecting into it, and that's what we are committed to doing in 25-26.
Councillor Stoddart.
Thank you, Chair. And picking up on what Rachel was saying there, so we briefed yesterday that we're going to have 3 levels of risk. So we'll have the corporate risk register, which will contain 10, 12 risks, and they are the top ones, which will obviously clearly include DSG. You'll then have the directorate level risk registers that the service directors and the corporate directors will then run their risks, and then you'll have at the lowest level, the tactical level, the project lists, and they will run that way. That was with Kerry Diamond, the independent person on the Audit and Governance video yesterday. She agreed that having a risk register at top level of more than 10 or 12 is waste of time. It's too much going on. You need to focus on those areas. So that's it. I very much agree with Councillor Harvey. That will be published and will be very visible when we get it done. We're working at pace, but we're working at pace on lots of different areas as well.
Okay, I think that's probably sufficient on risk. It is a really important area. Again, this feels like an area where I hope that as part of this new risk management strategy, there will be an opportunity for members to be informed about what's going on, and we'll certainly be looking at it in SMB. Very quickly.
Just one really important thing that has just come to mind as you talk about that. I think one of the recommendations from Audit and Governance Committee yesterday was that it was included in the member training, and that's going to go through the member development working group to make sure that everybody is cited on the new risk management strategy, the risk appetite statement, but more importantly, the responsibilities of elected members in risk management for the council.
Okay, we have ranged far and wide around the revenue budgets. Are there any other points or questions people want to raise on revenue? I was hoping that the answer would be no, but Councillor Stark has put his hand up.
Well, I thought we were going to do it by directorate.
We were, but we're running out of time.
As you know, my favourite directorate is Economy and Environment, Ross. Every year I come back to whether you're getting a fair deal or not. My concern is slightly different this time, Ross. You've had responsibilities transferred into the directorate, around 5 million on said transport and over 3 million on strategic assets, which has boosted your budget. So it actually looks impressive now, even though it's just a change of where those budgets sat before. My concern is that you're picking up a lot of risk in all of this with these transfers that existed elsewhere. And I really want to seek reassurance from you that this is not going to affect the wider service delivery that you actually are responsible for, because I don't know how the staffing arrangements have been put together underneath that. But send transport is a very big risk area, and I'm very conscious that in the past I've talked about you being underfunded compared to the rest of the directorates, maybe for valid reasons, and I'm very concerned that this additional budget responsibility you've taken could actually throw some of your other initiatives off track.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Stark. If not only for the opportunity for you to remind everyone that we are your favourite directorate. So, I mean, I think that the assurance is there in terms of how we've restructured things, and you'll know from my presentations recently to all members how we're looking at the directorate differently now, separating the frontline services from the delivery of major capital projects, which we might come to in a moment. And then on the sort of commercial property aspects, the fact that property has moved across, it's come at the right time because we were already looking at how we look in our sort of commercial approach for the council, how we use our assets better, the income from those assets, but also the investment that will bring in terms of our regeneration and growth as well. So that's working within the directorate, but sort of aligned to its own priorities. We touched on the home to school budget earlier on in terms of that review, and Rosie is the SRO for that programme. I think the fact that also it's being presented in the budget, it's sitting under E&E, but it's sat there as its own specific line, so it's not being sat as a sort of an additional pressure to the directorate. But we do know that we need to be working with our colleagues in terms of reducing the spend and thinking about that. So that the move in the budget across isn't directly impacting, it's not putting new pressure, it's just highlighting the pressure there is across the whole organisation to reduce the spend in that area.
Thank you. I'll be keeping a watch on that.
Okay. I'd like to turn our attention to the capital position. I just want to... there is a kind of ongoing round the houses dialogue, I think, between SMB and the executive around how we think about the capital programme, where we say we don't think that you are programming the capital program, profiling the capital program in a realistic manner, and the executive says, no, it's all fine, and then we say you haven't delivered everything that you intended to do in that year. You should and I feel like this is probably not the point, but I feel like we should have an opportunity, the executive and the SMB, to have a conversation about why we have those different views on the capital program, and try and achieve a consensus on what we're trying to achieve in that. And so I don't want to forestall any questions or points members might make, and we haven't got to work programme, but I think that would be, otherwise we will just keep making the same recommendation and you'll keep rejecting it. And please, Councillor Stoddart.
I think that's a bit harsh to say we reject it. We acknowledge it and consider it. So I can just give you some figures to make it clear why we have this position. So in 2022-2023, we spent £46.4 million on the capital programme. In 23-24, we spent 47.3 million, and this financial year, 24-25, we're spending 79.6. So we are spending more money and therefore delivering more, and that's unrefutable. That's the fact, and that's the forecast at the minute. Plus, together, of course, we get the dedicated technical expertise that we've aligned for the 25-26 projects. So that's what we're delivering, and that's a hard fact. So,
are you not accepting my olive branch that we could work together outside of this meeting?
Oh, I'll take any olive branch at any time, and we welcome any opportunity, any possible opportunity to work with SMB. As I said earlier, I'd very much love you to assist us and come through and work with us on DSG and SEND.
I'm sure we can pick that up in the work program. Rachel, yes?
Just to agree with you, Chair, I think there is that challenge of explaining slippage sometimes in the capital programme, and I think in the meeting that I had with you and members a couple of weeks ago, I think I committed to considering the financial reporting of that capital programme to enhance, maybe by priority areas or by most significant variance from the planned spend, to give a better explanation of the reasons for that slippage. And I think that's a start point for developing that understanding and how SMB might work to understand that with the executive.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor Harvey. Who else? I have Councillor Bartlett. Councillor O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Chair. And, whilst I hear what you say, Councillor Stoddart, that the reality is that in February last year, when the budget was set, you promised to deliver £160 million worth of capital programme. That was then factored down in the autumn last year after around about the end of Q2 by £60 million. And the latest Q3 forecast is nearly £20 million down on that. So I think the Chair's point that, Scrutiny Management Board's concern that you are not realistically profiling the delivery of the capital programme is a valid one. And I'd really like to ask you now, I know, because I've sat where you're sitting, how hard I pushed to try and get realism in the forecasts that officers were being presented with from project managers on spend, and the extra columns in Karen's wonderful spreadsheet which show, commitment and year to date and all the rest of it from Q2 onwards tell their own story that, our project managers are not realistically forecasting. When you look at year to date spend and you look at the commitment that's been made but not yet invoiced, the forecasts are simply not the truth of the matter. And so it's either, you know, one of the reasons why Project Management Board, the Project Management Office was brought in, was really to try and put some challenge in there. And I'm just wondering what's happening with the programme management boards that are continuing to, you know, not inject realism into the forecasts that are being produced when you've only got, you know, you've got a £96 million programme and you're still nearly £20 million adrift on that within weeks of having adjusted it down by 60 million. Are you confident that you're actually going to be delivering the 79, 80 million pounds that's being forecast when we get to the Q4 outturn?
Yes, I am.
To what degree of accuracy?
Within 5%?
I'm going to bet you £5 of my pounds that that will not happen.
This is very much what I had in my mind when I was suggesting that we keep having the same conversation backwards and forwards, and maybe we should take it out of the room and agree. So I think this discussion has reinforced what I already thought we should do. Rachel, please.
I think something that we can take away from today is Councillor Harvey's comment about challenge of robustness of those forecasts. The financial information relies upon that information from either the contractors delivering those capital projects, or through our project managers or the senior responsible officers delivering that. So I'm giving you my commitment that I will work with Ross, and we will consider how we increase the accuracy of that forecasting, using, as you said, Karen's magnificent spreadsheets. We have the data available to challenge, and we know that data is comprehensive, a line by line basis. We all love those spreadsheets, but that's the start point. And I think, as you rightly say, there's an opportunity to strengthen how we do that, and Ross and I will work on that in 25-26.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bartlett.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. I was completely thinking about something else then. I was thinking about the performance report. I'll go back to capital. Yeah, I mean, well, one comment on the previous conversation that we've just had. You know, we've talked about everything going up. We talked about inflation in the round, etc. So every pound that we don't spend in the financial year that we wanted to spend on a capital project that we factor forward to the next year is actually probably worth less than the pound it was when we first thought how much we could get to it. So that's my thought on that. What I've always not liked about the way that the capital programs are colour coded, where blue being the underspends on capital programs, is they're not necessarily all coming in under budget. You know, project has delivered under budget, say, for the Green Homes Home Upgrade Grant. It then goes on to say the underspend is based on the number of applications. So it's talking about not as many applications coming forward to enable the spend. So what always I find difficult to understand is whether or not a project is actually underspent, or whether it just hasn't achieved its spend. And I think they're two very separate things, and I think really they should be teased out, and they should be reported on separately, because, you know, quite often this is going to be grant money. What happens to the money that didn't achieve its spend? Does it always go back? Does it go to a different pot? So I think by calling it a project that delivered underspend is slightly disingenuous sometimes.
Okay, can I take Councillor Driscoll's question at the same time? And
sure. Yeah, thanks. I'm just really concerned, following on from what Councillor Harvey said, that we seem to be constantly over-promising and under-delivering a little bit as far as the capital programme is concerned. And I hope this isn't down to perhaps political expediency sometimes, where we're announcing stuff we want to move forward and these projects, and it wasn't perhaps as realistic as it might have been that they were put into the budget. And I'm also concerned that what we're going to see now is a traffic jam of projects, I like this phrase, being pushed into 25, 26. And would they, would Councillor Stoddart agree with me that what we actually need to see is some real clear delivery prioritisation, that we really prioritise which projects we want to see done, and that we really evidence that new project management arrangements are going to be delivering these results, so that people can see that we're not just over-promising, we're actually able to get these projects happening in the time frame that we promised they would take place. Thank you.
We are very pushed for time, but Councillor Crockett has persuaded me she can add one last question.
Thank you, Chair. Just finally, really, can you assure this board that the Project Management Office are continuing to drive our capital programme, and that the recent changes to the department are not causing more harm than good?
Okay. Can I have quick responses to those three questions? Succinct responses to those three questions.
Should I take the first one? Councillor Bartlett, accept some of the areas that you have highlighted are could be strengthened in terms of those capital reports. And I think, again, I'm reinforcing that commitment to reviewing the explanations that we include. You know, we might introduce a new colour code to highlight a different theme across that, but we will take that forward, and I commit to reviewing our capital reporting in 25-26.
So to pick up Councillor Driscoll's point, you know, we aim to deliver those projects, but in the openness and transparency that I refer to many times, when we're then made aware in Q2 that we're unable to do that, we come completely clean and say we're now going to reprofile that into the next year as we go forward. And we normally include in our performance report why those things have been moved forward. So the comments are in there. But we work with Ross and on the various strategic management boards on the projects to ensure that we as a cabinet, we want to deliver these. It's very important for us because the whole thing of the capital programme is it delivers improvements in the quality of life for everybody across Herefordshire. So that's why we want to do these things. And we wish to set a challenging and aspirational target. I don't think that's wrong. We try to be realistic as we can be, but we are realists, and when we're informed that this is not going to be able to be delivered, we then hold our hands up and we make everyone aware through our reports that you can see that it's now been moved. So there's nothing opaque we're trying to do. It's very transparent.
Rachel?
Just to pick up on your point about prioritisation and delivery, once those capital projects have been approved in the budget and we've identified the funding, the next step is for my team to work to make the resources available at the time we need them to. We've got an ambitious capital programme, and included in the budget was a borrowing requirement for some of those elements. So one of the things that I'm strengthening through links between finance and Ross's team in the majority, because they are the major capital projects within his area, is to understand the timings of delivery. And you said, you know, we need to make sure we prioritise those and understand the delivery profile. And similarly, from my perspective, from a treasury management, a cash flow perspective, I need to understand that as well. So it's one of the areas that I think we are focusing on already with a view to strengthen.
Yeah, because there's no point in borrowing the money if you're not going to spend it. It's costing you money. I'd be interested to know if we been borrowing money then that's been costing us money that we haven't been spending.
No.
Good.
Finally, Ross, reassurance on the PMO?
Yep, I certainly can give that reassurance. It goes back to what I said before in terms of the new structure, the fact that we've got delivery directors focusing on both infrastructure and growth, the economy separately. That's given us that senior sort of leadership that we've needed across the teams to focus those. I think going back to, again, previous questions, we've got a stronger delivery plan now and a sort of more realism in terms of how much work needs to be done before you get over the starting line. And I think some of the projects we've seen in the past that we've probably thought we're going to get there quicker and we haven't. And I think it's part of this conversation that you're asking to have sort of as a focus group, whatever it might be, we can certainly present that delivery plan for the next 18, 24 months that shows what work needs to be done, what work will be on site this year, what's going forward as well. So that will certainly help that conversation, I think.
Okay, I'm going to draw that to a close now, and I'm going to pray that we can agree recommendations in quick time. Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you. Going back to my previous blank look when I was looking at the performance report, and one thing that we haven't talked about that's in the performance report is a great big section called the Local Authority Data Explorer, where we referenced it and said, it's that bit out of date, which it is. But then we've come up with some top 10 indicators to demonstrate a more meaningful indication of the latest performance, which is fine, but they're not the same as the government's in a long shot. And there's some quite positive data in the government's matrices, but there's also some really concerning stuff like how our carers are feeling. And so in terms of putting something like this in the performance report that we are considering, it feels to me that if we're going to talk about something like the government local authority data explorer, we should actually say something about where we are in that. So I just wonder why it was decided to use 10 different things rather than what the government think are useful to us.
Okay, in 2 sentences.
As quick as I can, Chair. So that was a decision that we took at Cabinet, that Oflog, we are reporting information to Oflog. We do it every quarter, but the information that sits on their website that then looks out to the public is now nearly 2 years old.
No, that's not my question. That's not my question.
My
My question is, why are the 10, why are the things that you say are our key performance indicators not the same as the ones that you're giving to Oflog? I'm not talking about the backlog in time. I totally understand by the time it gets into the public domain, there's going to be a backlog in time. I'm talking about the content, not the timing.
So Cabinet, together with the CLT, came up with those 10. And those are the 10 that we felt are applicable to report.
Okay, there might be something that we want to look into at a future session. It sounds very interesting. I think Jess will confirm. I think the government is abolishing Oflog.
Yes, that has been done, but they are still maintaining the Data Explorer, so you can still access that online. But yes, as Councillor Stoddart said, the 10 has been decided in both as the Cabinet, but also the senior officers have decided that for their areas, they were choosing 1 or 2 indicators that really shows a really true picture, more recent picture than what Oflog presents. So therefore, this was deemed to be a much more meaningful suite of indicators than what Oflog had decided on, which has not just our local authority, but lots of local authorities across the country. There is that consensus that those indicators weren't necessarily as meaningful and doesn't necessarily give us the warning indicators that Oflog had originally decided upon. So it's not the right suite of indicators that we should be considering.
Okay, thank you very much. It does feel like something we might want to pick up in the work programme. It does seem interesting. Right, I'm going to try again to say that's that. Let's be super quick in agreeing on recommendations, fingers crossed, because we do have a couple of other things to cover after. For convenience, could you read out what we currently have, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will. The recommendations currently are as follows. That Herefordshire Council, 1, undertakes a risk assessment regarding the cumulative risks facing the council from the dedicated schools grant and SEND transport and the steps being taken to mitigate these risks. 2, engages all members regarding the cumulative risks from the dedicated school grant and SEND transport and the steps being taken to mitigate these risks. And 3, ensures that the council's risk register is shared with scrutiny committees as part of their work programme planning.
Any comments, suggestions? Councillor Harvey?
I would expect that if the risk register is shared, it would demonstrate that the DSG risk that is presented to the council is something that is already assessed, as we've heard in the room here, and forms part of the risk, the corporate risk register that's being managed either at corporate level or at directorate level. So maybe the thing to do is to just take a look at the risk register, and then we can make a decision about whether or not we feel that all the relevant risks are being adequately covered there.
I don't recognise the first bullet. I don't recall in our discussion for SMB to take a risk assessment. I don't know where that's come from. But I invited...
No, this is so. This is about. So for me, this is about recommending that the cabinet look at the cumulative financial risks altogether and the plausible worst case scenario and think about the mitigations. That I'm sure that you are looking at these risks, the key risks, one at a time. It's about, because I specifically asked if you were looking at those cumulative risks together and didn't get that an assurance that you were.
Well, perhaps I misunderstood your question, because we do. We're all very much aware of that. So, but it's your recommendations, but I believe that the first one is not nugatory because we're doing it. But I rest my case.
This was what was causing the sleepless nights, as I recall.
Yeah. Councillor Harvey?
Yeah. Last year, Scrutiny Management Board have made a request to see the delivery plans for the savings for the coming year, and that never happened because the committee meeting that they were supposed to go to was cancelled, and we just never got back to it. I think in the light of the the words that we've had in the room here, that all of the savings programmes have got delivery plans for them, but also in the light of the fact that very many of the savings that, big savings that are part of this year's budget have not come to fruition. Could I propose a recommendation that this year Scrutiny does get sight of the savings delivery plans for the coming year, reflecting on the reality of the failure to deliver some very big programmes in the year that we're scrutinising financially and performance-wise now?
How do other members feel about that? Is there a sense of agreement that you would like to do that? Can I just, nobody's, without a few people nodding their heads, I'm not getting a sense there's a lot of support for that recommendation.
I would support it.
Okay. So we can put it on and vote for it.
Just bear with me then.
Please.
So just highlight that those detailed activity plans to deliver the at-risk savings are underway, as you've heard from a variety of directors today. It's the plan that they will be included in the Q4 outturn report that's reported to Cabinet in, I think that meeting has now been moved to June, but it's the May agenda.
Sorry, run that past. So the
detailed activity plans are being finalised currently, so that they are in place from the 1st of April, which I know is next Tuesday, and they will be included in the Q4 outturn report.
I don't know if that will satisfy Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I think my point is about the savings for the coming year in the light of the fact that we didn't get the assurance at the front end of this year that the delivery plans both existed and were credible for the savings for this financial year.
Sorry, can I just clarify? So we've got the Children and Young People Year 2 savings plans in the 25-26 budget, and then we will have detailed plans to support delivery of the savings that we've not delivered in 24-25, and that's what will be made available as part of Q4 reporting.
Yeah, but you've... also got the transformation savings that have been built into base, and the if you're referring to the undelivered savings that have been built into base in the coming year's budget, those the plans for those savings will be published as part of the Q4.
Sorry, yes, all of those.
Looking forward to Q4 then.
So are we? Do we want to leave this recommendation on, or are we? Okay. So.
Noted.
We can still combine the first two as I suggested earlier.
So do you want to say that?
Yeah, I was just saying you can merge 1 and 2 on the recommendations. All you need to add really to 1 is undertakes a risk assessment regarding the cumulative risks facing the council from the dedicated schools grant and send transport and the steps being taken to mitigate these risks, and subsequently share this information with members.
For me, it's not just those. Those are very large financial risks. It's more the cumulative. It's cumulative risks of a whole set of things, of which those are the most significant. Because we talked about the cost pressures. So it's about what if the government doesn't give us the money we expect? What if the government doesn't give us the support for the food waste contract? It's all of those. It's not just DSG and send for me. It could even just be undertakes an assessment of the cumulative financial risks facing the council. It would be sufficient. Is that? Are you happy with that?
Chair, I know they repeat each other, but they are fundamentally two different things. One's talking about our internal workings and the other is talking about members, all members.
The reason I've split them is just in terms of actually actioning them and delivering them. I just think it would be cleaner and easier and more transparent to split them that way. Normally I don't recommend proliferation of recommendations, but I think on this occasion it would be appropriate.
I'm afraid, I hate to do this, but could we have a quick vote on extending the meeting by 10 minutes to 1:10. All those in favour? All against? 1, so yes. Are we, yes, go ahead.
I have some potential wording for that, sort of regarding the major cumulative risks, including DSG and send.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, pardon me, I've got distracted.
So put the word major in front of cumulative, and including from the dedicated schools. Including, yeah.
So just trackpad issues.
Okay, any more? Councillor Harvey?
Can we please vote on whatever we end up with here individually rather than en bloc?
Certainly. Any more? Okay, we'll take them individually. So, do you need to read? You do need to read them again.
Yes, I do.
So if you read them one at a time.
Okay, then I'll read them one at a time. So the first recommendation is as follows: that Herefordshire Council undertakes a risk assessment regarding the major cumulative risks facing the council, including the dedicated schools grant and send transport, and the steps being taken to mitigate these risks.
All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Against? 1, 2, 3. That is, any abstentions? I don't think so. That's carried. Next one.
Recommendation 2 is that Herefordshire Council engages all members regarding the major cumulative risks, including the dedicated schools grant and send transport, and the steps being taken to mitigate these risks.
All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Against? 3. That's carried. Ensures that... oh, sorry, you read
That's
these,
okay.
don't you?
My apologies, Chair. The final recommendation is that Herefordshire Council ensures that the Council's risk register is shared with scrutiny committees as part of their work programme planning.
All those in favour? That one is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. We have a couple more items on the agenda, which we will cover off. The Herefordshire Council Plan Delivery Plan Working Group, I'm afraid the paper is not ready for this committee, so we will have to defer that. Recommendations update. Could you just briefly talk to this paper, Daniel?
Yes, Chair. The spreadsheet and paper that are shared with you, sorry, the tables that are shared with you in the report, are the responses that we've received so far from recommendations made by the Scrutiny Management Board since 2023. All of the recommendations that you have made have been shared with officers on at least 2 occasions. Although the report doesn't specify a date which they were shared with officers, I can assure the committee that we did a review of all the recommendations in October, and all outstanding recommendations were sent to officers for what we believe to be at least a second time. We just felt it was faster rather than going through all of our records to see who'd been sent what previously. So I can assure you that all of the recommendations that appear in front of you have been shared with officers on at least 2 occasions and have been chased at least once beyond that in the previous 5 months. What I would ask at the moment, as we're asking of all committees, is some response in due course, not necessarily now, for what you would like ourselves to do with these actions going forward. Did you want to respond to them anymore? Did you want further information? Are you happy for us to close these off? It's down to you, really. We don't. This is the 4th of the 5 committees that this report has been presented to, and just by way of assurance, no other committee has come to a definite understanding, and all of them have agreed that they would like to see this report more iteratively, and they will come to a decision in due course on how to respond to it. So that's over to you.
Do members have any... I mean, my feeling is the executive not responding to recommendations from scrutiny committees is unacceptable. And I think we should recommend that the executive explain why it has failed to respond to so many recommendations and takes urgent action to rectify it. If Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, well, this council voted a couple of years ago that it was going to stick with the cabinet system rather than go to a committee-based system. Scrutiny is the other side, the statutory requirement when operating a cabinet-based system of governance, and irrespective of whether or not the quality of the recommendations coming out of the scrutiny process, it should be recognised and treated as part of the governance process by the administration that recommendations are responded to. You do not have to accept them, you don't have to like them, you don't have to implement them, but you should be responding to them. And it's a shame because the leader's been here in the room all the way through, and it's great that he's been here for this meeting. It's just a shame that he's not here to take this away on Cabinet's behalf, but I hope Councillor Stoddart will take that away. I'm sure it's an omission because everybody's very busy, but it's been an omission for a long time, so I support your suggestion, Chair, that we formally express our disappointment with the current situation.
Councillor O'Driscoll.
Just the recommendation that came out of Connected Communities on the 12th of March, that Herefordshire Council ensures that the statutory scrutiny officer drafts a protocol to ensure timely responses with faster escalation as required to outstanding recommendations.
I mean, I think that recommendation is fine, but I think we, especially given SMB's role over the whole of the scrutiny process, we should make it very clear our unhappiness at this situation. Councillor Stoddart.
I find myself in complete agreement with Councillor Harvey. It's unacceptable if we're not addressing these things. It is very much scrutiny's part of the reinforcement of our democratic processes, and we therefore, we may not agree with them and we may not action them, but we will respond to you, and I give you my assurance that we will resolve that. And on behalf of the leader and my cabinet colleagues, we will do that. Thank you.
We definitely want another one that the executive should explain its failure to respond within the timescale to scrutiny recommendations.
Asks the executive to explain
explain its failure to respond.
Outstanding recommendations.
Yes. And then we also want a commitment from the executive that it will respond to recommendations within the required timescale henceforth. Thank you for that, Councillor Stoddart. Sorry, I was a bit distracted, but it's good. It's good to have that commitment. Any more comments on these on this point? These recommendations. Are we all happy, Councillor Bartlett?
Personally, I would like to see the second one tightened, strengthened a little bit. So rather than asking to seek a commitment to respond, that we actually ask them to commit to respond.
Yeah. Councillor Harvey.
Sorry, I mean, this is a constitutional requirement. It's actually, we've heard in the room an assurance from Councillor Stoddart that, you know, it seems like Cabinet have not been aware that the recommendations have not been responded to.
We've been briefed on the recommendations. We've discussed them. We may have elected not to do them, but we have considered them. So all I'm concerned about is why has that information not come back to you? It should have been done. And I give you my categorical assurance through with Councillor Harvey to the chair that I will address this after this meeting. Okay, so would the committee be happy to take out that commit to respond at least? And would you like to take out the explain the failure?
Well, it's there now, so it at least we've got a, if we keep it in, then we reinforce what Councillor Stoddart said to us.
I might argue that the word "it's" in the second recommendation is perhaps a bit assumptive. Yep. Change it to the failure.
Okay. Any more comments on that? Members, would you be happy to vote on these en bloc? Any objections to that? Okay, so you will read them?
Yes, I'll read these out. Okay, the recommendations tabled are as follows. That Herefordshire Council 1 ensures that the statutory scrutiny officer drafts a cross-scrutiny committee protocol to ensure timely responses with faster escalation as required to outstanding recommendations. 2, asks the executive to explain the failure to respond to outstanding recommendations. And 3, provides training on producing recommendations to all members of scrutiny committees.
All those in favour? Against? So we have 2 against. I forgot to count how many were in favour.
I did vote in favour. So
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favour, 2 against. 1, yeah.
7.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. The work programme, we have had some possible suggestions for items to go on the work programme raised in this meeting. we did have a work programming session, and I apologise that our work hasn't progressed quite as fast from that as I had hoped. But I commit to the committee that for the May meeting, we will come to the May meeting with the committee before that, having had the opportunity to discuss and having a really good idea of what our work programme will be. Councillor Harvey.
Could I request that includes a consideration of the content of the corporate risk register when it's provided to the committee?
Absolutely, that's very, yes. So if members are content with that, then I think that leaves us with our date of the next meeting is my birthday, Tuesday the 20th of May at 2 p.m. Thank you for officers and cabinet members who've attended. Thank you for members of the committee. Thank you for the committee staff. I'll see you soon.